And we're live.
Hi, today we're live at the SAA headquarters. That's the Society for All Artists headquarters at Newark. And today I'm going to show you how to paint a misty woodland scene. I've just got a handful of colours here. And I'm going to start off straight away with the body of the blue pastel. It's like a bluey grey, just to the lower centre area. Take that out a little bit wider. Using the body of the pastel, the paper I'm using is called pastel matte paper, and I use this a lot for my pastel work. Above that, we're going to put some grey, very pale grey. I'm using the body of the pastel so you can cover a large area of the paper quite quickly. For more detailed stuff, I'll use the tips of the pastel. And I like to start sparingly. You can always add more. It's much easier to add more pastel than try and take pastel off. Above that, a little bit of white. And the pastel matte paper is just taped onto a wooden board. It's a lovely robust paper that will take a lot of work, but I like to limit the amount of pastel I put on first of all. I'm just going to blend that in now with my fingers to create a slightly misty effect. Pastel matte paper doesn't smudge as much as many other pastel papers, so when you want to soften pastels together, then you do need to rub it quite a bit, use quite a bit of force. For larger areas, if you don't want to use your fingers, you can use the side of your hand or even the palm of your hand, and you can get more pressure that way. And already in the middle there, it's looking nice and misty. Well, underneath that now I'm going to add some sort of autumnal grassy colours, a kind of a khaki colour, and take that a little bit wider, up a bit at the sides, and above the white, a little bit of cream colour. This is the kind of thing that you can do with just a few colours. You don't need many colours at all. Even just tone. The most important thing about this is tone. So as long as you've got white and say black, and you can create a lot of greys using those two. But just a handful of colours will do for this to create a nice sort of tonal recession. This is just the background to a lot of trees. So just work those colours in as before. I'll add a darker brown now at the base. Again, using the body of the pastel. And what I love about pastels is that you can do quite a lot fairly quickly. And you don't have the same pressures that you would have with paint in terms of drying, so you can stop and start. There's no problem with consistency of paint or wetness of paper or wetness of canvas. So again, just working these colours in, adding a little bit of darker grey now as well around the top, and a bit down the sides and the bottom there, and a sandy colour around the top as well. So I'm quite bold to start with. The detail will come later. A bit more creamy colour, and then work that in with my fingers or my hand. I don't want to put too much pastel on to start with, because then it's harder to put subsequent layers of pastel on. And what you can do to limit the amount of pastel you put on is just use a brush and move some of that pastel around. I'm hoping that the camera will be able to pick up some of that dust that's gathering. Just spread that out and then take it to an area where you haven't got much pastel on, and then work that in to the relevant area. And you can move pastel around that way. You can get rid of some pastel as well if you ever get too much on. but this just helps to spread it out a little bit. And I'll darken a little bit more at the bottom here, and a bit more up at the top. And then work that in again. So we've already got that sort of misty, hazy effect. I'd like a little bit more blue in down here. So you can put light colours over the top of darker colours and darker colours over the top of lighter colours as well, as long as you don't put too much on to begin with. There comes a point often with pastel where you can't put any more on because there's just too much on and the paper loses its grip or its tooth. And then I might use a fixative to create a new surface to work on. But I like to use it sparingly to start with because it's much easier to add more rather than to try and take pastel off. And just a little bit more white up here. So we're nearly ready for the first layer of trees. Just blend that in, nice and soft. So it's relatively easy to create this nice, gentle, peaceful, tranquil, misty effect just by blending the colours, rubbing them in together. And there comes a point where your hands get a little bit dirty and you then may just need to wash them or use a wet wipe before moving on to the next stage. Now to create some background trees, I'm going to use that blue that I started with very, very lightly. No great pressure, just using the tip of the pastel for fine lines. I'm hardly touching the paper now, very, very light touch. So using the tip of the pastel to get fine lines, or you can use the body of the pastel to create a slightly thicker line. And I don't want these to stand out too much, so I'm going to soften them with my finger, just blur them a bit so they run into the background. They might not look terribly neat at the moment, but that doesn't matter. A lot of this background is going to be covered up. It's the overall effect that I'm looking for. And the same thing next to that, a few more very fine, distant, hazy trees. It helps to have reference of trees to look at. You know, everybody knows what a tree looks like, but they can be a little bit tricky if you're trying to imagine them. So having good reference, photographs or sketchbooks is very helpful. Barely touching the paper. If I press too hard, the line will be too heavy and then they won't look distant. I just want to soften those a bit with a cleanish finger. If your finger's a little bit clumsy or a bit too big for softening like that, you could use a pastel shaper or a pastel blender and just go over the area a little bit more carefully like that. That does the same thing, but it's a bit more specific. And it just pushes the pastel away into the background a little bit, making it less severe or less clear, a little bit more hazy, a bit distant. I mean, I can go over it with my finger if I'm gentle. Now, if you did that on a lot of pastel papers, it would probably smudge too much. But as I said earlier, pastel matte paper is really good for building up layers without for building up layers of pastel. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Building up layers and layers of pastel. And it will take multiple layers, as long as you don't put too much on to start with. Now, I just want a few even paler ones here, and I might just go over those or that with some grey. And some white, grey, pale grey ones as well.
Just mind your head, Jeremy.
So we've got some blue and grey distant trees. I'll just soften those a little bit with my finger. And a touch more blue at the base here. Now I'm going to darken quite a bit the foreground area. I'm just going to put a little bit of black on. The black is very, very powerful, and a little goes a very long way, so I don't want to put too much on. Just a light covering like that, and then use my finger to blur it. And some grey. The beginning of some background trees. Just soften that a little bit. And another one on the other side. Doesn't matter if it's a bit patchy. It's still early days. There's a lot to go in front of this yet. So it's just softening some of that grey and black into the background. And a little bit of paler grey. Now, to make the actual trees, the bigger trees, as we come into the foreground, the trees are going to get darker and darker. So I'll be building up the strength of colour gradually, finishing off with really dark, almost black trees. And so to start with, the first tree that I do, we need a piece of masking tape. And it needs to be the height of the picture, like that. And then carefully, we need to tear it down the middle. And this should help to make quite an interesting, hopefully, natural shape of the edge of a tree. You've just got to be a bit careful that it doesn't stick to itself as you come down the strip. So far, so good. Just put that bit down for a second. pick up the other bit. So now I've got a nice irregular edge that I'll stick down onto the picture. Now if I had too much pastel already on the paper, that's why I brushed it around a bit and blended it in, really worked it into the pastel. There's not very much pastel on the paper. If I'd added too much, then the masking tape won't stick to the pastel that's already on, won't stick to the paper. So I'm going to put a tree about here at a slight angle. So we're looking at the left torn edge here, the left-hand side of this strip. So that's the right hand of the tree, and now this is the same piece of tape, and that should correspond. Now you can decide how wide or narrow I want the tree to be. So I'll just have a fairly thin one, I think, about there, and stick this down carefully. You could do the same thing with a blade. You know, you could cut a shape of the tree if you wanted to, but I think this torn way just gives it a natural shape, a natural look. So just make sure that's well stuck down. You do also need to check the masking tape that you're using. Some masking tapes are really sticky, like this one, it's brilliant. Others less so, they only have low tack, so you might find that more of a struggle. And with a bit of luck, you might be able to use the same piece again and again, well, a couple of times at least. But I've got a few here, just in case that went wrong. I've got several pieces prepared here, which will save us a bit of time as well. So this first coat is going to be fairly pale. I'll use some of the blue that I used in the background trees, and just put a little bit of pastel in the middle like that. Not too much, just take that down so far. And then rub it down the length of the tree. I might make it a little bit paler just by adding a bit of grey to it, very pale grey. Maybe a little bit more. And the distant trees want to be quite pale, and the nearer trees will get darker and darker. So that's the first one, and then you take the tape off, and lo and behold, there's the first tree. If the outer edge is a little bit severe, you just find a clean finger, if you've got one, clean finger, clean dry finger, and just run your finger down the edge like that, and that softens it a little bit and pushes it back a touch. Lower down, that tree is just going to disappear into the undergrowth like that. That's fine. So I'll do the same again. Maybe just turn the tape upside down, so I've got a couple of, got a slightly different shape. That was it before. Well, if I turn it the other way up, we'll have I'll put it about there, I think. And just stick it down. Well, this won't be quite as sticky now because it's obviously had some pastel stuck to it, but I should be able to get another tree out of it. And then this one, something like that. Make sure it's well stuck down. Blue again. Rub it in the length of the tree. And take the tape off. I think that one's had it now. It's served its purpose. So we've got two trees. And again, if the edge of the tree is a little bit too harsh or too severe, just run your finger down the side of it. Get rid of what's on your hand, on your finger, and do the same on the other side. blend it into the, gently blend it into the undergrowth. So there's 2 trees. Now, we're going to go a bit darker still, so I'll get some more tape. We'll have a tree right next to that. That's a slight angle, I think. Make sure it's well stuck down, and then the corresponding torn bit a little bit wider, particularly at the base, you know, so the lower part of the tree should be a bit wider, bigger than the upper tree trunk. So we'll try some blue again, but I'll add a bit of grey to it to make it a bit darker. Same as before, rub it the length of the tree. Maybe even put a little bit of a light edge to it. Just soften it a little bit. Take that off there, and I'm going to put another tree over here. That off there. Same again. Just make sure that's well stuck down. Just use my dirty finger now and see what happens. It doesn't really matter if there's a few slightly rough edges. You often get little bits of moss or lichen or ivy growing up the side of trees, so I don't mind that. It doesn't have to be absolutely smooth. I just like to soften those a little bit, and the more you rub them, the further away they look. This one's supposed to be a distance away. Again, that just fades into the background. This one does as well. So I think we want some darker ones further out, maybe 1 or 2 in the middle, perhaps another one there as well. Got plenty of tape left. On the other side. Stick it well down. Now we'll go a bit darker. I'll have some more blue. I'll add a bit of black this time. The black is really powerful, so a little goes a very long way. Don't need much, particularly if I want some blacker ones afterwards. Maybe just a little bit more. Turn it upside down, and we'll have another tree over this side. About there. such a simple idea, but very effective. And I've done this with other colour schemes as well, and it works very nicely with all sorts of different colours. But the main thing is, I think, to get lighter ones further away and darker ones, darker trees in the foreground. So a little bit more blue, plenty of black now, and a little bit darker still. Maybe a bit of brown as well. A bit more black. Maybe a bit of light on the side. There's some creamy colour, maybe that's a bit too pale. Some tan colour just on the right, here and there. Just soften that. Take the tape off. Another tree. So we're building the woods. I think we're about halfway through now, so we'll stop for a little break and I'll catch you later.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA, Society for All Artists, is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing of being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to carry on with the picture, building the wood gradually, bit by bit. We're getting there. It just takes time, a little bit of patience, but we're not in any hurry. So some more trees now. We've got plenty of tape left. I think I'm going to go darker and darker, but there's one. I'm thinking about putting a tree not quite in the middle. But I think the darkest trees are going to be right at the edge. I might make this a dark one as well, possibly. Fairly dark.
Jeremy, we've just got a comment from Jeanette, who says she loves your tip about using masking tape for trees. So maybe say a little hello to Jeanette.
Hi Jeanette, heard you like the tip about the trees with the tape. Well, it's not difficult. Well, the hardest part of it is getting a tear, the length of the tape. So practice your tearing. It might help if you put one end on a table or on a bench or on a board, so that you can control it a little bit. And maybe instead of tearing a long bit, just tear it in little bits, little stages. But like anything with practice, your tearing gets easier. So that's a darker tree here, black, maybe a bit of blue in it as well. Right. It's a good solid tree there. And I'm going to use just one edge for that. I think we'll have a really dark tree on the extreme right. And a very dark tree on the extreme left. So we'll use the black for both of those. And when you get into the swing of it, you could do quite a lot quite quickly. The black is very, very black, so you probably don't need too much for those trees. So that's that one. And I think we do need one or two in the middle here, and then I'll just do some detail with a pastel pencil. There, I think. Still got a clean-ish finger. Another thin tree here, I think. But reasonably dark. So I'll use the brown and the grey. There's one and the other. Where to go, where to go? There. And there. Some more brown and black. Take those off, just soften the edges on some of those, I think. And when you get these main trees in, you know, everything that I did earlier, the background trees sort of almost pale into insignificance, but they do add a sense of distance. And there wasn't much point in doing a lot of detail or there wouldn't have been much point in doing a lot of detail in the background. I just need to soften some of these and then put in some detail with the pastel pencil. So just run a clean finger down that edge and that edge, and both those edges. That's smudged a little bit there, but I'll sort that out in a minute. I'll take a few branches over there and there. That's it. And just work the lower part of some of these into the ground. So we can't see an exact point that these go into the ground. It's all very hazy or very misty. So you can get away with a lot of artistic license.
We have a question for you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Another one from Jeanette, who is asking, what do you recommend using to set your pastels when finished, or to fix your pastels, I guess, when finished, especially for transportation or for posting out?
Yeah, I generally don't spray my pictures with fixative I think a lot depends, because if I sprayed this with fixative, there's hardly any fixatives that I've come across that don't darken. In fact, there's no fixative I've come across that doesn't darken a picture and make the colours really garish. And if I sprayed this with fixative now, the colours would be really, really, really dark, and it would lose any subtlety. So I generally tend not to use fixative at the end of a picture, but I might use it at an intermediate stage. One I really do like is called Spectrafix, which is non-alcohol based. Alcohol-based fixatives seem to darken, and the Spectrafix one is a natural casein based product, and that, although that does darken it very, very slightly, it does dry a little bit lighter than when it's wet. So that's the best one I've come across. So if you're going to spray it with fixative, I'd use that one, that Spectrafix. Or better still, don't spray it with fixative at all. If you're going to post a picture, I would cover it with crystal paper, which is a bit like tracing paper, and stick a board on top of it so it cannot move, and tape it round so there's no possibility of any of the pastel moving. I generally, I like to frame or mount a picture with a double mount, but I often have I always now have a gutter mount, which is like a third mount on the inside of a double mount. So it looks like a double mount, but the gutter mount is set back from the double mount, so you can't see it. And therefore, if any bits drop off the pastel picture, they drop down the back of the gutter mount rather than over the front. Now I can use the tip of the black for doing some larger branches. The black might be just a little bit too big, you know, so you can soften a little bit. But for finer branches, I'd use a pastel pencil, which just give you that bit more control, got a better point to it. So you can imagine lots of branches coming down at the side here. Help to lead your eye into the picture. Change direction. No pressure at the end, very light touch. For darker, heavier branches, press a bit harder. Anything further away, don't press hard at all, very, very gentle. These are, I don't know if the camera's picking these up, very, very light, distant, hardly touching the paper at all. Fine twiggy bits. And this is just a black pastel pencil. A few scribbly grasses here as well. A few branches coming in from the top. I think with fixative as well, it perhaps depends upon the type of picture, but if it's fairly sort of vibrant and maybe avant-garde, you know, experimental or much looser, bolder work, then you know, spraying it with a fixative might make the colours even more powerful, might help. But for something that's quite subtle like this is, I think it would spoil it. And most of my pastel pictures tend to be fairly delicate. I like lots of sort of subtlety in them if I can achieve that, and so that's really why I tend not to use fixative much, or if I do, maybe just a very, very light coating. But it is a problem if a picture's not mounted or framed, or if the picture's not framed, if it's not behind glass, then of course it's fragile. You know, if you've already run out of space on top of your wardrobe, then get them framed. So there's a few grasses and a few, exactly the same, twiggy bits and grasses, and nothing too specific, but quite vague. For the slightly darker trees, you can press a little bit harder, and for the really dark ones, darker still. to know when to stop, isn't it? I think as a general rule, when it occurs to you, when should I stop, then that is a good time to stop, even if it's just temporarily, and walk away from your picture and then come back to it in a little while. And if anything does need doing, it usually points it out fairly quickly. But you can look at things for too long, and I think it just helps to see things through fresh eyes. So give it a break for a while and come back to it. And then I'll just put one or two more bits in. Some of the pastel smudge there, it's not too bad, but I'll cover it up with disguise it with a branch. If you can't get rid of something, just take attention away from it by putting something else in. And there as well. Well, in a minute I'll take the tape off. The pastel matte paper's stuck to the board with the same tape I used to do the trees, and if I take that off, it will give us a nice clean edge, a little bit like a mount in a way, and that just does really set it off quite nicely. So I think that'll do for now. Take it off away from the picture, not towards the picture, just in case it should ever tear. It's not likely to on this paper, but it's just a good practice whenever you take tape off a picture. Take it away from the picture. And there we've got a nice edge. And with a mount on that and a frame, that would make it look even better still. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed the misty woodland scene, and maybe try it yourself if you get a chance, and see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft. I've created my half of the postcard, and now I'm going to pass it on to my painting partner.
What have you got for me, Vic? Half a skull. What are you trying to say to me, Vic? Are you calling me an old fossil? Okay, let's see what we can do with it.